Do you have a DonorsChoose.org project that needs funding? Today's sponsor is Advancement Courses, and they are donating 10% of their sales until September 28th to DonorsChoose.org projects. And if you're needing professional development for yourself, you get 20% off their 200-plus online PD courses using this special code just for 10-Minute Teacher listeners. So stay tuned at the end of the show. 14 million people read about this teacher's one question that she asks students. We talk about it in episode 364.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Andre Sasser is a 9-year math teacher from Louisiana. Andre, tell us about a tweet you sent out lately that's become very popular.
August 27th, it was like our second week of school. I remembered something that I had heard this summer. I tried it out and it was absolutely fantastic. And so on my lunch break, I tweeted it out like I, do sometimes when things go really well in my classroom. Overnight, it kind of exploded and I was not prepared for it.
What are the stats on it now?
As of this afternoon, it had 338,000 likes. It had 61.9 thousand retweets. And if you view the stats, over 14 million people have viewed it.
Wow. Okay. What was the tweet?
Okay, so the tweet is, 2 years ago, I was saying, do you have any questions? Last year, I switched to what questions do you have? It made a difference. Today, I tried, ask me 2 questions, and they did. And those questions led to more questions. It amazes me that the littlest things have such a big impact.
So you swapped to now saying to your students, ask me 2 questions.
Yes.
What did that look like the day that you sent this tweet out on August 27th?
To be honest, I can't exactly remember what questions they asked. It was in my Algebra 2 class. We were probably going over functions or parabolas at the beginning of Algebra 2, and they just had a really great question, or 2 or 3. And it's one of my favorite things in my classroom when a student asks a question and then another student answers, and that leads to another question, and they're piggybacking on each other's questions, and I'm just sitting there and they're answering and they're collaborating, and it's beautiful.
So even though you're saying ask me 2 questions, you're not necessarily the one who answers it.
Correct. Yes. And they'll have a debate or they'll disagree. And in my classroom, even if they get the right answer, I don't always let them know that they have the right answer. Sometimes I'll be like, why do you think that? Or tell me a little bit more about that. And so they're always thinking.
So did you use that in your math classroom today?
Actually, I did in
what
geometry.
Happened?
So we were learning about angle addition postulate, and that's generally when 2 angles share a side to create a bigger angle, and there's lots of different types of problems that come up with that. I said, all right, guys, so we've been doing it. Y'all, you worked a few problems. Ask me 2 questions. And one of the questions that they asked was if it works with 3 angles. And so we had a great discussion about that, what it would look like with 3 angles and so on and so forth. So it was great. And the same thing happened last week. I wrote this one down too. We were talking about polygons, and I introduced the word polygon and the definition of a polygon. We went over several examples, what a polygon looked like, what it didn't look like. And I thought everything was great. I thought I had shown lots of examples. And so, just trying it out again, I said, ask me 2 questions. And one of my students said, well, do all the sides of a polygon have to be the same length? And I was blown away by that question because in my head, I have all this math knowledge that they don't have because they haven't been doing it for years. And I knew the answer to that immediately. And I thought I had shown enough examples to kind of convey that, but I hadn't. And so that was a great question because it leads into a whole other topic on regular polygons that we'll get to later. And it was great because the things that we think we've covered so well, we don't always do so well.
So, Andre, you've obviously done something in your classroom. You've overcome your students' fear of looking dumb because many students will tell you that's why they don't want to ask questions. How did you do that?
Well, I teach in a small school and I teach the same student for a couple of years. So we are definitely very comfortable with each other, but they know that there's no such thing as a stupid question. They know that it's okay to make mistakes. I make mistakes in front of them. I ask questions. Sometimes if they ask me a question, I don't know the answer. I have absolutely no fear in saying that I don't know the answer, and we look it up, or I'll say, I will find that out for you. They know it's okay. They're comfortable doing that and having discussions.
So you've been teaching 9 years and you feel like this year is very much of a different year because you've changed how you ask the question.
Yes, absolutely. I've just been more reflective, I guess, on the way that I'm really asking questions and having discussions with my students. It's not a lecture, here's your material. We do a lot of collaboration and discussion. And this year, I've also tried to give up a little control and letting them discover some things. And that has worked out really well, too.
So it's a different question, but it sounds like it's also a slightly different classroom philosophy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say that. I have a very I don't know how I would describe my philosophy. I'm very laid back. My classroom's very laid back. We have lots of discussion. I do believe that the person doing the talking is the one doing the learning for the most part. I mean, you can also learn by listening, but my students know if someone's asking a question, everyone is listening to that question. It's not one person stuck and let me help that one person. We are talking about it and, answering each other's questions.
Okay, you said something fascinating. The person doing the talking is the person doing the learning. Okay,
Yes,
does that scare you about maybe some classrooms? Or I've had days where I did most of the talking, and so now I'm going, Andre, should I feel upset?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Every day you can learn something and become better the next day. And of course, I mean, just because a student is talking doesn't mean they're learning, obviously, but the person asking the questions, because you're only learning things if you ask questions, and you only learn something when you make a mistake and, you kind of learn from that mistake. So that's just kind of my philosophy.
Andre, do you think that there's a certain amount of humility required to shift learning in this way? Because, I mean, here's the thing. You're having conversations in math class. Most people think, oh, math class, it's either, black or white, or it's this or that. Do you feel like you have to step back a little bit?
Yeah, I could say that. I think so. I mean, I feel like you have to be comfortable with your content and know exactly where you're going, because like the question my student asked about the polygon having the same side links. If you didn't know enough about polygons, you might not be able to answer that. Like showing them that it's something coming. That's a great question. And just knowing your content and being comfortable answering questions, being comfortable also not knowing the answers yourself. I think that's important.
Well, have they asked you a question lately you didn't know the answer to?
Yes, actually they have.
What was it?
One of my geometry students asked me so we were learning at the very beginning about points, lines, and planes. And do planes exist in the real world? Because planes go on forever. And they're really trying to wrap their head around that fact that lines and planes go on forever when nothing in our physical world actually goes on forever. And so we've had some interesting discussions about that.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound fascinating. Now, how do you feel? Because I think that I know in my early days of teaching, honestly, I was afraid of the question I couldn't answer. Are you?
Yeah. I mean, I was at one point. I was, because you feel like you're supposed to be the expert all the time. And I don't think that's always the case.
So how do you feel? How'd you feel about that question? You were like, ooh.
Yes, that's exactly how I was. I was like, I really can't answer that right now. Let me think on that some more. And so we've had several discussions throughout the weeks over that question.
I think it's just so important that we encourage kids to ask hard questions, because the answers we get have to do with the questions we ask. And if we're not asking hard questions in every class, by the time they get to upper middle and high school, what kind of questions are they going to ask when they get out into the world and we need them to solve these really hard problems,
Right. I totally agree.
Yeah, because, I know it seems like all the math questions have answers, but in our world, a lot of the really hard questions don't have easy answers, do they?
That's right. That's right. And also, I'm very much concerned not only about the answer, but how they got there. So that's kind of important to me, too. Even if they get the right answer, I still want to know what they did, how they got it, because my students can come up with, I've seen several students come up with different methods that even I would not have thought about. And so we share those out, and it's fun to have those conversations.
Okay, so I'm intrigued. You're saying that sometimes you have these questions and these answers, and then the answer is not good enough. You want to know how they got to that answer?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So how do you do that?
Well, one of the things I learned about this summer is number talks. And so, for example, we did a number talk today, and the problem was 4 times 50. And I didn't care as much about the answer as I did the method that they used to get 4 times 50. And so they came up with lots of different methods. And it's just the little things like that that kind of build their number sense and make them see that the journey is also, beautiful, not just the destination.
Just consider trying out this week. Ask me 2 questions. From now until September 28th, Advancement Courses, an online provider of professional development for K-12 teachers, is donating 10% of their sales to funding DonorsChoose.org projects. Go to advancementcourses.com/give to submit your project today. And if you're in need of professional development, the 10-Minute Teacher listeners like you can get 20% off any online courses with the code COOL20. That's COOL 20. With this coupon, a 3 grad credit course for continuing education, salary advancement, or recertification is only $359. So go to advancementcourses.com/coolcat to learn more and make sure you use that coupon code COOL20. Never stop learning.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.